David, we are to you for appearing in this series. I know you just came back from a trip abroad, and that takes its own toll. But here you are, and here we are, and there are lots of people as well wanting to hear you. For those of you tuning in from this country and abroad, I'll just say a few words about our speaker and save the time for him to speak to you. Rabbi Wolpe is one of this generation's most prominent, most influential, and most important rabbis. He's senior rabbi at Sinai Temple in Los Angeles, although briefly he and I talked a few minutes ago, and although I sit in the Midwest and he sits in the far West, we both started out life in Philadelphia. So special pleasure to have a Landsman with me and with all of us for this session. Many of our programs, as those of you who tune in know, feature the most accomplished scholars of anti-Semitism of this generation. And Rabbi Wolpe is certainly among those. In addition to being rabbi at a major conservative synagogue, he's also the author of some 7 books. I'll just mention the titles of 2 of them in particular. One, a very important and widely read book, is called Making Lost Matter, Creating Meaning in Difficult Times. And one of my favorites is a book that he wrote on David, subtitled The Divided Heart, published by Yale University Press. He writes and speaks regularly in a number of other venues. His topic today is going to deal with the subject on all of our minds. Anti-Semitism has been around for a long time, as we all know. And the question of what makes the anti-Semites tick is one that never goes away. Is it possible to get inside their heads and understand the nature of the often very passionate animus that they bear towards Jews? Rabbi Wolpe is going to focus in particular on the psychological, emotional, impassioned aspects of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a social disease, but not a rational phenomenon, and he will help us understand, I'm sure, some of its more irrational elements. It's my pleasure now to give over to Rabbi David Wolpe.
Thank you so much. When I used to teach rabbinical students homiletics, I would always tell them not to begin with an apology. So I'm going to violate my rule. First, I want to thank Dr. Rosenfeld. It's such a pleasure to be able to, I've been very much looking forward to this seminar, and it's an important series. Unfortunately, 2 days ago, I was diagnosed with COVID. Despite the vaccine and the booster and everything else, it's a fairly mild case, I'm pleased to say, but you can hear it in my voice. So please forgive me if I'm not 100%. I want, and also, as you can see by the background, I'm quarantining in a friend's apartment so that I do not infect the people at home. I want to talk about why people are anti-Semites, because I think that we can't cure, as Dr. Rosenfeld said, by the disease by understanding it, but by understanding it, we can come a little bit closer to trying to counter some of the phenomena that exist, and also because it's bewildering why this small people that has contributed so much to humanity for so long is so hated. And every phenomenon has some explanations, even if, and I admit this at the outset, the explanation can never capture the entire phenomenon because some of it is purely irrational. But there are reasons why the Jews have been the singled out people throughout history. Although I want to begin by just reminding us of one thing, which is the foolish canard. I was going to say stupid. It's really a stupid canard that Jews exist because they've been persecuted. Neglects the fact that lots of people have been persecuted through history. Most of them don't exist anymore. I mean, the Bible is full of tribes mentioned that only exist in memory because they're mentioned in the Bible as enemies of the Jews or co-inhabitants of the land. A lot of people have been persecuted. The Jews aren't distinguished by survival because they've been persecuted. They're distinguished by survival in spite of the fact that they've been persecuted. So please understand that an explanation of the duration of anti-Semitism is not at all an explanation of the duration of the Jews. That's its own phenomenon, a miraculous one, and really for another time. I want to give 5 separate reasons why people become anti-Semites. And the first one is the human phenomenon of otherness. That is, if you think that people are just by nature good, I suggest you visit a playground. What happens when a new kid comes into the playground? Do the other children go, oh, look, a new child, let us share our toys with you? No. Someone who is alien is threatening. And for most of Jewish history, for a variety of reasons, Jews have been the identifiable other. And because they were the identifiable other, they naturally evoked that tribal sense of this person is not like me, and therefore my reaction to them is hostile. I'm going to talk, I think, a little bit later about the fact that this, to my mind, is why America has been so hospitable to Jews as opposed to other places. There are reasons of ideology and so on, but I think the fundamental reason is, for most of Jewish history, there were Russians and Jews, there were Germans and Jews, there were Frenchmen and Jews, but there are not Americans and Jews. Because America is a conjuring of different kinds of groups, Jews are one group among many, and therefore have not been the focus of collective hostility the same way they have been in other places. We can talk about whether that will always continue. I'm by nature hopeful, but obviously that's a discussion. Nonetheless, we always have to remember that otherness was one of the sparks of anti-Semitism. Now, you realize that a reason is not necessarily a good reason, right? The people who come in, I mean, you cannot want immigration without hating a national group of people. Those are two, to rational minds, those are two separate phenomena. But irrationally, people say, if I don't want that person in my neighborhood, it means they're a hateful group. And that has certainly been, throughout the wanderings of the Jews, one of the reasons why anti-Semitism has kicked off. Another reason is that Jews are the perfect targets for conspiracy theories, and the human mind is naturally conspiratorial, right? When we see phenomenon that we can't explain, we seek causal explanations, even if they are very, very far-fetched, because it is better for most of us to settle on an explanation than to remain in, than to remain in uncertainty. This is what John Keats famously, the poet, Jonathan Keats famously called negative capability, the ability to remain in uncertainty, which is very hard for people to do. And why are the Jews such good targets for conspiracy theories? One, they were scattered. That meant there were Jews everywhere, right? So in the same way that the diamond trade became a trade of Jews because Jews could always trust other Jews, since diamonds, after all, you can't always know if it's real or not. But the diamond trade became an international trade of Jews because Jews trusted each other. And so that meant that there was this international working of Jews doing all sorts of things. There were Jews in this country, in that country, in the other country. So if you want a group for conspiracy, who better than the international people that exist in all these countries? They also, and this is a continual and recurring part of anti-Semitic conspiracies that I'll talk more about in a minute, they're also able. Jews are a people that has risen to the top in almost every place that they've been given the ability to. So whatever the explanation of Jews' ability, and I really don't even need to enter into that. I have my own theories, you probably have yours, but whatever the explanation is, here's a people that dwells in all these different lands and they're able. which means they know how to run things. They know how to run things. They're on all these different lands. Things are going badly. Obviously, the people behind the things going badly are not the natural, inevitable forces of history. It's got to be the Jews. Also, they're mysterious. That is, they speak a language we don't understand, because Jews in most places had their own language or their own variety of the spoken language. They have customs we don't understand. And they have byways and fundamental beliefs that are different than ours. And then finally, still on the conspiracy part, the kinds of trades that Jews were forced into were trades that have connective tissue, like merchants, bankers, lenders. These are so-called rootless trades, right? You can be a banker anywhere. It's like working from home with Zoom. So you have this sense of, oh, there's a banker here who gives money there, who trades diamonds there, and it naturally feeds into conspiratorial thinking. Of course, very few anti-Semites in history said, well, maybe if we let Jews own land, they wouldn't all be international merchants. And that was the truth. But nonetheless, one of the things you have to realize is that if an idea appeals to your hatreds, you're not likely to analyze it one step beyond your hatred. So people didn't say to themselves, most people, there are some noble exceptions, didn't say to themselves, well, why are Jews in these trades where they're money lenders, for example? And the answer is because they can't be in the other trades that they might naturally gravitate towards. And again, speaking of rational reasons to be an anti-Semite, rational obviously in quotes, if you're a money lender and you owe and you have the note on someone's debt, they have a very rational reason to want to drum up hatred against you and get you kicked out of the country. And Jews were kicked out of nations many times for the very simple reason that either the royal treasury or the aristocracy or whomever didn't want to pay the debts. And you can't just say, I don't want to pay my debt, let's kick the Jews out. No, you have to say, the Jews are evil for this other reason, not because of my debt. Of course I pay my debts, but they're evil for this other reason, and we should kick them out. An ancillary benefit of this, of course, is that I don't have to pay my debts. So there were people, remember that not all, this sounds strange to say, not all anti-Semitism is good faith anti-Semitism, by which I mean people can say they hate the Jews for reasons that benefit them without really hating Jews, which makes a sort of perfect storm. That is, there are people who hate Jews because they hate Jews, and there are people who hate Jews for reasons that have nothing to do with hating Jews. And the more this picks up steam throughout history, the more people will say, which is another sort of a kind of sub-clause of anti-Semitism, well, all these people wouldn't hate them if there wasn't something to hate, right? I mean, obviously, Jews have always been hated. Doesn't that tell you something? I mean, isn't the kid that everyone hates in class hateful for a reason? People don't hate for no reason. And so that also adds to the sort of perfect storm of anti-Semitic explosiveness. The other part of this, which is, again, related to all the other pieces, because none of these, I think, are separate from the web, is that anti-Semitism is a protean hatred. You can hate Jews for almost anything. You can hate them because they're communists. You can hate them because they're capitalists. You can hate them because they're weak and powerless and rootless. You can hate them because they're strong and powerful and colonialists. And the reason that that is so is that, again, Jewish ability has risen to the top of almost every cause that Jews have given themselves to. So, yes, some leading capitalists were Jews, as you heard just recently in Lara Logan's stupendously idiotic comment that the Rothschilds funded Charles Darwin so that he could come up with the theory of evolution, which contains such a density of logical idiocies that it's hard to unpack all at once. But it's the same idea, which is Jews are responsible for evolution, because every and evolution in this reading, of course, is a bad and evil thing, because every different kind of social movement at some point had some Jews in the vanguard of it in the modern world. If it's psychology, it's Freud. If it's communism, I mean, it's Marx and Trotsky and many others. If it's capitalism, it's the Rothschilds and, again, many others. So once again, realize that the hater doesn't take step two. It doesn't say, well, there are other capitalists, there are other communists. Well, Stalin wasn't Jewish and Lenin wasn't Jewish. That doesn't matter, because once you've identified the Jews in the position where you can hate them, you stop there and you have your tidy package of reasons why you can hate Jews. And then for my fifth reason in the parade of why people are anti-Semitic, which I'm sure you've enjoyed no end, Judaism did introduce a lot of restrictions into the world. The idea of a God who had ethical demands on human beings, and the 10 Commandments, which are very honored in theory, but not so much in practice. The notion of this deep conscience that has made the world feel as though somehow the Jews brought into the world this sense of you're not supposed to do these things, made people extremely uncomfortable. This is my favorite line. I have a favorite line about anti-Semitism. I know you probably shouldn't, but I do. It's from Maurice Samuel, who was a writer and a translator. When someone asked him, why don't people like Jews? He said, no one loves their alarm clock. And I thought that was a great, I mean, first of all, it's the fact that, like, Jews do, in fact, the presence of Jews wakes people up to many different things, and they don't want that feeling. And so it is easier to just forget. And this piece, all of this together doesn't even speak about, in some ways, the most mysterious part of anti-Semitism, which is the fact that Jews are subhuman and superhuman at the same time. That is, the Nazis called them vermin who run the world. And that sort of dual, I mean, it's the heart of the irrationality. That dual sense of this is a group that are less than human, but they're so much smarter than us that they run everything. I think part of it might be what the British scholar Hyman Maccoby once identified. He said, the original Christian myth that Jews killed Jesus means that Jews are powerful enough to kill a god. And to be able to kill a god, you have to be, in some sense, superhuman. Vermin don't kill a god. Superhumans kill a god. And so there is a mythos that is a powerful driving narrative in the Christian mind that, by the way, did not exist for a long time in the Muslim mind. Now it does, because unfortunately, European anti-Semitism came and infected Islam. Islam had its own anti-Semitism, but now it's combined both because of European anti-Semitism, which was that Jews have this, it's the protocols of the elders of Zion anti-Semitism. That is, Jews run the world, and how can they run the world? Because these are the people that were powerful enough to kill a god. And if you think about it, and again, I'm speaking psychologically, not rationally, every Christian on some level is aware of the fact that Jews were alive in the time of Jesus. And the vast majority of them did not see him as the Messiah or as God. Now, if God walks among you and you don't see it, I mean, this is God we're talking about, then either you are incredibly ignorant and stupid and blind, which is one explanation, or you are superhumanly evil because you know, but you're the devil, right? Who denies God but the devil? And so there was at the heart, I think, of the beginning of Christianity and Judaism, this contradiction that never went away. And part of the tragedy of human history is that the New Testament was written out of a sort of family quarrel. Remember, the first Christians were Jews, and they were fighting with other Jews because they saw a different end to the story. And family quarrels are sometimes the bitterest, as we know. But this family quarrel got solidified in sacred literature. And therefore, it became a family quarrel that lasted for thousands of years. And that is a great tragedy. Now, those are all my reasons why anti-Semites are anti-Semites. I do want to also address the contemporary question, which is, can all this be untangled? And as I said, I'm hopeful. I'm not naive. A couple of observations about the contemporary situation. First of all, the anti-Semitism we see on the right and on the left, which I would say is on the far right and predominantly on the progressive left, is not a new phenomenon in the sense that it hooks into many of the things that I spoke about earlier. And the tropes that you will hear are not new tropes. Nobody's come up with a new kind of anti-Semitism. It's just that they've come up with rehashes of the old one. The thing that makes me optimistic about America in particular is this fact that there are many, many, many different groups. Nonetheless, it is worldwide, there are conflicting sorts of signals. For a long time, I used to say that my hope for the Middle East, like the Middle East was the only thing that made me into a Marxist. Otherwise, I'm a thoroughgoing capitalist, but the Middle East made me into a Marxist in the sense that I hoped the solution would be economics, that economics would override everything else, would override ideology, would override religion, because if the Arab nations ever saw how much it was in their economic interest to cooperate with Israel, maybe that would. Now, that is happening a little bit with the Sunni nations, not with the Shia nations, with the Sunni nations. And the Abraham Accords are a good example of that. And so there is, I mean, I was in Dubai. I went there for a reason nobody goes to Dubai. I went there to see the World Chess Championship because I used to be a chess player, a tournament chess player. But I went there and I could walk around Dubai with a kippah and nobody looked at me twice. Nobody cared. Nobody was upset. I said to the consul general here, before I went, I said, do you think it would be okay for me to walk around Dubai with a kippah? And he said to me, some of the Israelis might be upset. It was funny, but he was right. So there is that development. And I think that development should be encouraged with every possible encouragement. However, as I mentioned when I was discussing this with our hosts beforehand, more than half my congregation is from Iran. And you have to give other people's life experience as much weight as you give your own. Growing up in the streets of Philadelphia, did I experience anti-Semitism? Very rarely. Not never, but very rarely, and it was minor. But I have in my congregation a whole people that was basically chased out of their country and lost almost everything. And when they say, never discount the possibility that it could happen, I can't say, what do you know? You don't know America. Because this was their life experience. And so I think that it is worth remembering that the Holocaust is not the only example. We don't have to keep invoking the Holocaust to talk about anti-Semitism. there have been innumerable examples around the world. Can it change? Yes, it can change. Ukraine is, I think, a very good example. In 2019, the Pew study did a survey of Central and Eastern European countries, and Ukraine was the most welcoming to Jews. Now, Ukraine has a reputation of being the most brutal to Jews after the Second World War. So that's an astonishing turnaround. Will it always be that way? I don't know. Anti-Semitism is a recurrent virus, but I don't want to be a thoroughgoing alarmist. I do believe that things can change, and they can change for the better as they can change for the worse. My general read of the contemporary situation is, in America, we have to just be constantly aware and speak out. Do I see an impending apocalypse? No, I don't. And I think those who do are doing America and their fellow Americans a real disservice, because I think most Americans have no desire to see the Jews persecuted or driven out or punished, or that's not the way this country has ever worked. And I don't see a gigantic shift. However, at the edges, at the margins, there are people who are nibbling away at the American compact of goodness to all minorities, Jews included. And the fact that we don't fit any minority profile is a cause for people to put us sometimes in groups they don't like. So obviously, to white nationalists, we are not white, right? To those who only see things in racial terms, we are white. And both of them put Jews in that category because that's the category they don't like, and therefore Jews fit into it. But we are neither white nor non-white. And also there are Jews who aren't white because you can't convert to be white, but you can convert to be Jewish. You can't be born black and be white, but you can be born black and be Jewish. So it doesn't fit that. And yet we don't fit religion either, because if tomorrow I said, I don't believe any of this stuff, I would still be Jewish. So it's I call Jews a religious family, which seems to me to be the best and most comprehensive term. But even that, going back now to make a complete loop as I close, remember at the beginning, I said how people don't like to be in uncertainty. The same thing is true when they look at Jews. What are Jews exactly? They're not a race, or maybe they are a race, right? When people say, as Whoopi Goldberg foolishly did, that the Holocaust wasn't about race, to the Nazis, we were a race, right? But to others, we're not a race, we're a religion. To still others, we're not a race or a religion, we're a people. And so that even that uncertainty, the fact that the category was created in a very different age and time, gives additional reason for hatred. But we are in a much, much better place than we once were. I hope that the progress will outrun the hatreds. And with all of that, I am open to questions or comments or objections, and I appreciate your attention and time.